Welcome on into BKL Nightly. This is the Let's Talk Ball edition. I'm Thad Brown. He is Carl Jones. Every single week, we go through the all-22 film of every single Buffalo Bills game, find out who made mistakes, who was better than we thought. In this case, it might be a little more of the former because there were plenty of mistakes to find in this game. Carl Jones, let's start with the offense because I think that was the big story coming out of this game, how this offense scored only 13 points. And of the many things that we get into individually, for you, the conclusion that you came from is a much more holistic one about where the Bills offense is.
Yeah, so I want to take it back a little bit. When Joe Brady became aboard, and even prior to him becoming OC, the Bills were ahead of the curve on where the NFL was going. The NFL, on defense, you're going to get light bodies out there to help defend the pass game. Well, the Bills said, let's get bigger. Let's get another tight end on the field, drafting Dalton Kincaid so we can be bigger. And so we're able to dictate the game on our terms. And they were right. They were ahead of the curve on that. There are a bunch of teams now who are rolling out 12, 13 personnel, 21, 22. And the Los Angeles Rams do it at a high rate. The Detroit Lions, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Kansas City Chiefs. All of the good offenses are able to roll big body groups out there and play out of that. The issue is that the Buffalo Bills don't have a pivot. They went so deep and so extreme in that direction that they don't really have a plan B to their plan A. When I think about the Rams, who I just mentioned, they have Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams to go to when it doesn't work. When I think about the Detroit Lions, they have Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams. And I can go down the Kansas City Chiefs. They roll out Noah Gray and Travis Kelce all the time, right? They have Rashee Rice. So, they're able to pivot when their plan A isn't working. And even with the Keon Coleman selection, he's another big body, right, to help out with the run game and help out with maybe some of the crossing routes and things of that nature. And they don't really have a pivot when you take away the run game and some of the play action stuff. So I think holistically their plan was sound. They just went far too extreme in trying to execute it.
The team I thought of is the Eagles, one of the best big body teams in the league, and they have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith on the outside. And I think there's a world where you can imagine Keon Coleman being an A.J. Brown type player. He just hasn't been good enough to do that right now. I want to get into the quarterback here because I think this is becoming a part of the problem, and not necessarily Josh Allen is the problem, but to me, the problem is, and I'm kind of close to what you're saying here. It's kind of the Venn diagram. We've got parts of this that are going to cross over. But Josh Allen is very much a symptom of this problem right now. Look, in this game, you texted me yesterday. He didn't look good. He didn't look sure of himself. He didn't look like he was seeing the field well. I've got, multiple examples of plays where I think he could have gone to this receiver, that receiver, a third down play, a deep ball to Elijah Moore and a stop route in the fourth quarter. Things that you would think Josh Allen, throws that you think Josh Allen would make, all the way up to the interception to where I know he's getting pressure. He talked about was cover zero. There was room there for him to step into that throw. I don't know if he makes that throw anyway. I think he's really asking a lot of Terrell Shavers to make that throw. But the thing that I land on with Josh Allen right now is that when he drops back, there are so many times where he is obviously trying to make the Josh Allen miracle play. I'm going to roll out for 15 seconds, go to the sideline, throw the ball across my body. As you pointed out after the game, his time to throw was as long as it's ever been, since his rookie year, whatever it was. That's largely because he had 3 or 4, 10 or 15-second snaps in there that took the average and just ballooned it. Regardless, that is the offensive game plan right now. What I've seen in this game makes me think that Josh Allen might be better off not necessarily focusing on making the miracle play we know he can make, but take advantage of the miracle when the in-structure stuff does work, because it happened in this game. There were plays he left on the field that he could have made if he had sat in the pocket, if he had given it a chance. I know there's good reason for him not to, but by allowing the in-structure stuff to function, it takes some of the stress off him, some of the stress off the rest of this offense, and I would think maybe gets the receivers a little more, I don't know, motivated is the right word, but certainly in rhythm and functioning like a normal offense would be.
And that's the battle that I'm sure he's fighting every single week. The stuff looks great on the whiteboard, and quite frankly, it looks good at times, decent at times, when Elijah Moore wins on, I believe, on a 10-yard out route to the field where he probably, I don't know his progression, but he could have let that rip and Elijah Moore would have caught it on the sideline. I know exactly what play you're talking about. That stop route Elijah Moore had when he was the receiver to the right of Josh Allen. And Josh Allen probably should have let that rip instead of checking it down. But then if you're Josh Allen, I don't want to speak for him, but there are times where it's I give chances for my guys to win, and they don't. So I'm sure he's battling that. Well, yeah, I want to trust them in certain situations, and then when I do, they don't pull through for me. I don't get paid $250 million to figure that out. But I do think that is something that I'm right with you with. He is not blameless in this discussion. He's not the lion's share of the blame, but I do think that he needs to play better and up his level of play as well.
Well, like I said, Josh Allen is not the disease, but he is, the fingers that are sore. He is the ankle that isn't quite working as well as it used to. There are other problems that are causing this, but it's infecting the rest of the offense here too. Real quick, I do want to bring up the Dalton Kincaid injury because you and I have been kind of lukewarm on him in general in terms of his impact on the offense. The one thing I do want to say is in the second half of this game, when he went out of the game, it was noticeable when it was Dawson Knox and Jackson Hawes who were running all these routes, the drop in athleticism from Kincaid to those guys. Kincaid may not be dictating a lot of things, but his athleticism does open up stuff for the rest of this offense.
Especially when they're in a trailing situation and they're forced to pass 70% of the game. And when you and I talk about that, we're talking about like neutral game scripts when they're tied, maybe in ahead, and he's not a player that's going to dictate the formations on the defensive side of the ball. But when you're in pure pass situations, he is their best pass catcher. It is much better for him to be out there on the field, and his absence was so obvious. I mean, the Dolphins, they played well. They played very well on Sunday. It was so apparent that Dawson Kincaid was going to be another mismatch for them. And once he left, it wasn't a mismatch no more.
There were no mismatches left. That defense was able to handle whatever they wanted to do. And I think, you and I might have been a little surprised at how little man defense they played too. It was a lot of zone. They seem to, and this will be the overriding part of this discussion probably, is how well this team was prepared and coached up right from the first snap of the game. The Bills go with slants and stops across the board, and the Dolphins sit with 5 underneath zone defenders. It was like they were in Joe Brady's head right from the first snap of the game here. And let's talk about Joe Brady, because, one of the other problems for me in this game was that the creative stuff just didn't work. The 4th and 1 play action off of the quarterback sneak look. I've been talking, and we've been talking on this podcast for weeks about, look, you've been doing this sneak for years, have some stuff off of it. So I'm glad that they're attempting it. But, and correct me if I'm wrong, as someone who's played defense at a really high level, if you are trying to play action off a run play that's essentially going to be straight up the middle, why are you running your play action horizontal? The defense you're sucking up is in the middle at you. You got to go over the top of that. You go to the outside, those corners and defensive backs, they don't care about what's going on in the sneak. That's not their play. So running play action out to that side, to me, makes no sense. And it wasn't the only example of that. There's another play. This is actually one that worked to Dalton Kincaid early in the game, where they're play actioning off of the counter run. Well, a counter run is fake left, run right. If you're going to fake left, run right, throw left, who are you faking out? What are you doing here? So stuff like that, bothered me in this game. We've talked about Joe Brady. What he does best is pound the advantages. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. When he had to reinvent the wheel in this game, it did not work very well at all.
I think that Joe Brady is a good offensive coordinator. Let me start there. I do think that you don't do what he's done for the past 30-something games and not be good at your job. But what I am concerned with, and it's becoming a pattern and maybe even a theme at this point, is that most of that praise that I just gave out is dictated towards the run game and not necessarily much at all in the vertical passing game. And these aren't one-to-one comparisons here, but I do think there is some correlation with it. Stephon Diggs under Ken Dorsey was phenomenal, and then some things happen behind the scenes, a lot of stuff. But Joe Brady comes in and his production falls off a cliff. You and I were sitting on this same podcast and we're saying, he don't look bad. It's just not working no more. I don't know what it is. You and I couldn't figure it out. He goes to Houston. He looks great. Tears his ACL. He's back. 9 months later, he's looking not great, but he's playing better now than what he did during Joe Brady's tenure. Matt Collins isn't a great receiver. He was okay last year in his role. He's about to surpass his yardage from last year through 10 games already in New England. I think about Curtis Samuel and Elijah Moore, and the selling point was they had Teddy Bridgewater and Jameis Winston and Joe Flacco and Deshaun Watson throwing them the football. They can't be any worse there than they are in Buffalo, and they haven't been. This isn't to say those guys will be Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and A.J. Brown, but I do think there is something to be said about those players in Orchard Park and their production falling off of a cliff. I don't know the schematics and why that's the case, but there is it has to be some correlation between X, Y, and Z and other places performing well, and when they come here, they're not.
I guess I'm just trying to, rack my brain for an explanation to throw a dart on the wall. If you are everybody eats and not focused on maybe spotlighting a receiver's strength. And not to say that Joe Brady doesn't do that, but when your thought is, I'm going to run patterns and someone's going to be open and my quarterback's just going to find that guy, you're almost not building the offense to feature the receiver. You're building the offense to feature the quarterback, which with Josh Allen makes a lot of sense in theory, but maybe in practice it's not working out as well. All right, let's move on. You brought up the run game here for a minute, and I agree with you. Joe Brady, I think, has done a pretty good job in the run game. He's had concept after concept after concept, and they all work, in part because the O-line and the running back are very talented. But look, you've got to be able to engineer that, and he's been very successful. One of the big concerns for me in this game is that a lot of those concepts just got stoned. It wasn't that the offensive line played poorly. I found very few missed blocks. It was that the Dolphins knew where to be, knew how to defend it. I didn't think Joe Brady did. He didn't go deep into the bag in terms of the run game concepts, in part because the team was down 2 touchdowns like that, and you're not running the ball very much after that anyway. But what the Dolphins did in this game looked like a team that knew exactly the blueprint on how to stop what's been a very dangerous run game. Jordan Brooks playing well at linebacker is a part of it, but I don't want to say that this run game now has been, like I said, blueprinted, but the fact that if I had gone back and seen Deion Dawkins and David Edwards and Connor McGovern missing blocks, I'd say that never happens. The Bills will be fine. That's not the case. Miami just knew exactly how to stop this team.
And you and I talked about this off air a little bit. We should have put a little bit more stock into Miami's performance against the Atlanta Falcons a few weeks back when they held Bijan Robinson to 25 yards on the ground. I think he went 9 for 25. Obviously, the run games aren't similar, so it's not going to be a one-to-one comparison. They're far more wide zone stuff. But this Miami front seven, at least, they've been able to be really stout against the run. So good for them for continuing that Sunday. It just would have been nice to have a pivot and say, okay, if you guys are going to put 8 in the box or sell out and gap out in the run game, that we can hit you over the top in the passing game. And they did it at times with Kincaid, but once he left, that wasn't the case. It's just very scary that if this team, in all of their losses, the run game wasn't clicking on all cylinders and they looked like they were eating nails trying to function on offense. And that's just the kindest way I can say it.
We've been talking about that in this show pretty much since Sunday, that look, if you can't run against Miami, who came in 30th in the league against the run, how are you going to run on, for example, the Colts, Broncos, and Chiefs in 3 consecutive games in January? To be fair, and to your point, I've been also kicking myself since Sunday I even joked about, well, Miami's run defense has been better, but it's still giving up $110 a game. Maybe I should have taken better seriously, because now over the last 5 games, I think their average is down below 100. That'd be top half of the league, top 12 in the league. So the run defense for Miami in the last 5 games actually has been above average, including this Buffalo game. All right, let's go over to the defensive side of the ball here, and a number of places to start. I think missed tackles certainly was the theme coming out of this, but to you didn't feel like that was the whole story of what this defense was about against the Dolphins.
I thought they played good. Whoa, a lot of y'all. I thought they played better than what their box score indicated. I know they gave up 30 points, but it was 16 midway through the fourth. Explosive runs are never great, so I'm not going to sit up here and try to throw some copium at that. But that is the facts. It was 16 points midway through the fourth quarter with an offense that was giving you nothing at all. Having said that, though, it is super discouraging when a 2-yard run turns into 7 turns into 12, and the Cam Lewis missed tackle, 0 turns into 59. That is super discouraging out there when you're out there on the football field, because if I can't put pads on thigh boards, put pads on stomach, put pads in your chest, and can't bring you to the ground consistently, that's demoralizing. So it kind of snowballs. It always works like that in football with some of the physicality stuff and some of the nasty. If you don't set the tone early, it's really hard to get it back, because another person across from you has like that edge over you mentally. So it snowballed and it hurt, but I'm not going to ring the alarms again about like this Bills defense. I think that they can be a solid unit based off what I saw the 2 weeks prior.
I'm with you on not necessarily this being a one-time thing, because tackling has been up and down all year long. There have been other games where tackling's been poor, but this also, I think, rings true with what the guys said afterward about how they felt the Dolphins wanted it more. They had a better attitude. You would think if you're not playing with the right energy, tackling is one of the first things that's going to go. And that was clearly something you saw on film over and over and, live during the game. To that point, not directly, because really it was everybody. Joey Bosa missed a bad one. He talked about Cam Lewis. The linebackers in this game, we've been talking about Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano a little bit here. they were nowhere in this game. They just were non-existent, non-impactful. Didn't want to say that they are also at fault for all these things. There's a lot of blame to go around for a lot of different misses. But for two guys that we began the season thinking that they were maybe not, like you say, S-tier players, but certainly way above average players, this has been multiple weeks now where we haven't seen enough out of those two players at that position. And this game, I don't want to say it was the most alarming, but it was certainly the game where I'm shaking my head the most about how little they affected the game from Buffalo's point of view.
Yeah, two plays stick out. I believe it was the first quarter where Tua Tagovailoa was going his progression and he got all the way back to his check down, and Devon Achane was just by himself on the right sideline and took it for like a 15-yard gain. Matt Milano just loses him in coverage. It's just loses his awareness on that play.
Let me interrupt you. I remember that play. That was a weird coverage because Max and Trey White both had receivers on the outside and both chased them like they were in man, and everybody on the inside was in zone. And I don't know if is the linebacker supposed to get out to the flat there? It didn't seem to make sense for me where he was located to get him out that wide.
He don't need to get to the flat. You just got to get to your curl flat. And he just went all the way to the middle of the field to take away that dig. You're right. He's not the flat defender. Devon Achane was going to catch that regardless. But can we make that a 4-yard gain?
Right,
not 15 or 20. I'm not saying that he was in the wrong, that he was not supposed to be in some cover 2 alignment flat defender there. That wasn't the case. And then the other situation with Bernard that was very discouraging was the 35-yard touchdown, the last one of the game, where they did a crack toss and Devon Achane went down to the right side of the defensive formation. And it was simple. The center, Aaron Brewer, beat Terrell Bernard to the outside and cut him off. And Terrell Bernard had to go up underneath the block. And going up underneath the block when it's Devon Achane, who runs like an Olympic sprinter, good luck, house call. So it's just not great when TB's supposed best asset is his athleticism, his speed, his instincts. And on a play like that, where it's supposed to be on full display, it's not. And they haven't played great. They're going to have to play much better. And I know things in front of them aren't stellar, but that hasn't been the case throughout this last 2-3 years. There's always been moving bodies up front, and they haven't looked like this.
You nailed it with instincts, too, because there was the play early in the game, the 3rd-and-1 fullback run with Alec Ingold. Matt Milano's just sitting there. That's a play where I would usually expect Milano to trigger. May not stop the play. It's 3rd-and-1, but he was sitting back waiting for the run to come at him when he was, I don't want to say wide open. I don't remember the play exactly, but that's a play where I would normally think Milano would be aggressive and get after the run. And there were a couple of those, but that part of the game and that asset for both players, like you said, that should be their calling card, is being able to use athleticism to get on top of runs before they have a chance to get on top of the Bills. And we saw so little of that in this contest. In terms of up front, I thought Deion Walker started strong and had multiple good plays. And there are other guys on the D-line I want to mention. But the negative stuff with these guys in the middle is just too much for a defense to bear. Daquan Jones, I thought, played pretty well, but he had to be on the outside a lot. Fedarian Mathis, is just a guy that, he looks like a practice squad player. There's fight there, but it's just not enough. When the Bills tackles lose, they lose 3 and 4 yards downfield. It happens way too often to be able to get any sort of consistent run defense going.
Daquan Jones was at edge today. Sunday. I saw someone tweet it during the game. I'm like, nah, y'all lying. Y'all just trolling. And then when I watched it back, I said, oh, no, they were serious. That's the state of the Bills' injuries right now, that a 320-pounder or whatever has to play edge. Speaking of the edges, though, I thought Joey Bosa and Greg Rousseau were violent in the run game. I thought they did a solid job for most of the game on setting the edge and getting off of blocks. There was one play where I thought Greg Rousseau was just like mean mugging someone the whole play, the way he was just defeating blocks. And I don't think he made the tackle off the top of my head, but he did a great job of stringing it out. So I do want to give those guys their just due. And if we're talking about the front seven, I thought Bosa and Rousseau really brought their hard ahead on Sunday.
100% agree. And Jordan Phillips needs to get some flowers too. He has been the one guy that I think you can consistently count on to battle play in and play out. There were a number of plays where he didn't make a tackle, but he occupied 2 blockers. And when you do that, now you can let Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano do their job. And for a defense to where Deion Walker might make the splash plays, but if I've said there are 15 plays where I want him to just occupy 2 blockers, he's doing that maybe 4 or 5 times out of 15. That's just not nearly enough. Again, Mathis Fedarian and Larry Ogunjobi in the same boat, just not being able to clog enough blockers, stop enough blockers. Jordan Phillips is doing that with an amount of energy. I got one more energy player for you later, but we'll get to that in a minute. Let's move back to the secondary now. Let's start with the good, and that's very much Cole Bishop, who is starting to stack really good games.
I want to go over that interception real quick. So the Bills were in a too-high look. That means two safeties staying high, 12, 15 yards down the field. They rotate in a cover 3 look. I believe it's Jordan Hancock or Cam Lewis that rotates into the box. Cole Bishop is on the far side hash. He's nice in a nice little pedal. To be fair, Tua Tagovailoa was eyeing Jalen Waddle the entire time. He didn't even try to look off Cole Bishop at any point. But nonetheless, he did his assignment. He did his 111th and read Tua's eyes right to the football. And the most important part and the most impressive part, and if there are anyone under the age of 18 listening to this, please pay attention. He high pointed the football. He met the ball at its highest point, and that is so crucial as a defensive back, especially when you go up against those wide receivers that like to dunk and those wide receivers that like to do the same thing as well. You, as a DB, have the same opportunity to go snatch the football out of the air just like a wide receiver. And that was super impressive and encouraging to see that out of Cole Bishop, considering, like we said last week, we hadn't seen a lot out of that at Utah or even his rookie season. If that's in his tool belt, and we're talking about a player that is willing to get his face dirty in the fan in the box, he is willing to play man-to-man coverage horizontally, and then he can give you something in a center field capacity like that, that's when we're cooking with gas here, and it's super exciting. And I can see the ceiling getting higher and higher each week. That play was just super impressive.
You're so right about that play because it looks like he's fielding a punt, and you're thinking, well, hard was that? I mean, the ball was in the air. There's a lot of bad from the Tua side on that play.
Yes.
But one of the reasons it's so bad is because Cole Bishop is doing his job from the jump. And when you see where that safety is, Tua should not be looking at Jalen Waddle. Cole Bishop has that covered from the top. You do not need to throw that ball. And Tua got exactly what he deserved when he didn't throw that ball. It wasn't just that play either. There was the late third down where you could see Cole Bishop noticing the Westbrook-Akine stop route or stop or curl, whatever it was, and was on top of it before the snap and darn near knocked it away. It probably was incomplete anyway. That was another one where you saw the coaching, the confidence, the athleticism all rolled into one. He's doing it play after play after play. There are still some mistakes here and there. He's still a guy in start 13, 14, whatever it is. But I agree with you. This game on top of the Chiefs game makes me very interested to see where 24 goes from here. Next to him in the secondary in terms of young guys, Max Hairston, totally different day. Sometimes we say, look, it's not as bad as you think. This game was probably worse than it looked because Hairston ended the game with the good vibes of the interception. Before that, though, he was getting an education from Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, Jalen Waddle was giving it to my boy. Welcome to the NFL. And I think I want to make this clear. I am not down on Max Hairston. My man has started one game in the National Football League. But I want to add some context into who he was as a prospect and what we've seen so far. His athletic profile and his scouting report was Kentucky played a lot of zone, so he is comfortable with his eyes on the quarterback and feeling routes and things of that nature. But in terms of man-to-man stuff that we saw at St. John Fisher and even his Kentucky's tape, he's a little raw still. You got to figure that out. And it was so apparent on that touchdown that he gave up to Jalen Waddle. Listen, I understand you're fast and you want to stay in your back pedal and stay as square as long as you want. I get it because you think that you can jump on anything in front of you and that you can catch up to anyone. Jalen Waddle run 4.2 as well. That brother, he's an Olympic sprinter. He can run too. I need you to get out of your pedal and cross over and run because we can rally to a 15-yard comeback. If he beats you to the sideline and he cuts that off as a 15-yard stop, so be it. But you do not want to get beat over the top by Jalen Waddle because you are not catching him. He is not, no disrespect, he is not Keon Coleman. You're not going to catch that, brother. So that's just a nice learning lesson. You know, they always say, like they always tell you that stove is hot and you really don't know until you put your hand on the stove. Hopefully he found out, let me get out of that pedal. Let me turn and run a little bit because if I just try to stay square the entire time and try to break on everything in front of me, and I got somebody that run a 4.2 across from me, that's what's going to happen.
Far be it for me to dive too far into your bag and try and say that I know exactly what's going on in there. But the thing that stood out to me with the Hairston Waddle reps, the ones he lost big, because there's another one on I think it was a corner flag that he ran early in the game, second half, whatever. Where when Hairston tries to engage physically in the middle of the route and stops the feet, that's when he's dead. That's when guys run past him and he can't catch up. That was the thing that stood out to me. Again, I'm not 100% sure of that.
No, yeah, never stop your feet. Never stop your feet. You always keep them moving because guys are just too good and you don't have no strength when your feet are stopped. Keep them moving.
Beyond that, one other guy I wanted to mention defensively was Javon Solomon, who I don't know if he has the physical profile to play edge all the time. And the Bills are using him a lot as a defensive tackle rusher because they're just frankly out of bodies. The energy that guy brings on a number of plays is going to keep him in the NFL for a while. He had a play where he came in on a rush. It was a screen to Devon Achane, and it might have hit. Solomon got within a yard of the quarterback, turned around, and made the tackle 10 yards downfield from the line of scrimmage. On a play where if he's not there, it's Devon bleeping Achane. We saw what he can do. That thing might have gone the distance. Now, Solomon got burned later throwing a block on the Max Harrison interception that cost the Bills 15. But I love the energy and wanted to mention it. He is finding ways to make plays out of sheer will. And on a defensive line that is looking for anybody functional to play right now, I was very, very impressed with Javon Solomon.
I'm not saying he's going to be Michael Hoyt, but if he can be that same guy that brings juice and brings some versatility up front, that will go a long, long way to helping out the D-line that is 2 players away from me and you lining up at edge.
My man is overflowing with juice right now. That will not be the problem. It'll be everything else after that. All right, one question I wanted to address before we put this game to bed. All the stuff we talked about in this Dolphins game, and yeah, there were some positives, we talked about it, but for the most part, it was overwhelmingly negative. It's hard to walk away from this game and think this Bills team is going to do anything in January. But it's the same team that we talked about dictating to the Chiefs the week before, owning that game. They won by 7. It was not that close. Buffalo controlled that game start to finish. How do we reconcile these two games? Where are you with what this Bills team is, and I think more importantly, what they can and or will be going forward?
I think I want to start defensively. I think we have enough evidence to suggest at this point that they cannot, and I mean cannot afford a team to just rely on the run game, because we have seen too many teams that don't have stellar run games run the ball and have career days on them. I know Bijan Robinson is great. He's going to be an all-pro. We can't let that happen. I know Derrick Henry is great. Derrick Henry hasn't done that all year besides against the Buffalo Bills. I know Devon Achane is fast. We can't let that happen either. And I think about what Alvin Kamara did, and I believe Keandre Miller in that week, and I think about some of the other weeks. I think that's the thing. So if they can find a way to either be hypnotic and confuse the Chiefs to throw the ball all game like they did 2 weeks ago, that's their best course of winning. Because I do think that they have sound plays and sound schemes defensively in terms of the passing game. I truly believe that. But I just don't think they have the bodies nor structure to slow teams down in terms of running the rock. Offensively, it's kind of the same thing. You just got to make sure that you pull over every playbook and everything that you can to make sure the running game stays on schedule, because I just don't know if you have the horses to consistently have a passing game that doesn't have guys that are threatening. Because once we get to the postseason, these are the best of the best. You're going to play every single secondary that has guys. I mean, I can't, unless the Bengals somehow sneak in, every single team that you're going to play has guys in the secondary. So they're just going to have to figure out more creative ways. And I know that's tough. There's only so many ways you can run the ball. That's where I land with them. I still think because of 17, you always have a puncher's chance of raising the trophy. But they've kind of made their bet in what type of team they are. So make sure you get out to a 10-0 lead in the first quarter, and I think that's where you can win deep into the season.
Yeah, playing comfortable, I think, is a big part of this. 2 things for me. Number one, the Dolphins, I feel like as a team who see the Bills all the time, I think they had a game plan and had an ability with the experience against the Bills to just unlock how you stop that team. I think it was in large part 1 week, a team was up, they were out for bear, they had a great game plan. Sometimes, look, when coaches and coordinators game plan, sometimes you have a game plan that just has everything on the other side covered. And I think that's part of what happened with Miami. The thing for me with this is that I think this also shows how much of a talent drain the Bills have on both sides of the ball. Offensively, because of what they haven't done in terms of creating a receiver depth chart. Defensively, because of injuries. There is enough of a talent loss on this group that you can have this game in Miami. You can look that bad, which makes me concerned about whether or not the Bills have 3 games in them to get anywhere in January. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's impossible, because we also saw what happened the week before against the Chiefs. All right, that's going to do it for us for this edition of Let's Talk Ball. Thanks very much for joining us. As always, you can check out this show on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Plus, and of course, Rochester First and WIVB Plus. We put it everywhere. You got to find a place where you can watch this show. For Carl Jones, I'm Thad Brown. We'll be back with you again next week talking Bills and Bucks. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you then.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 on demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.